Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends is brought to you by Funny&Amen. If you want to support this podcast and haven't seen any of our other content, head over to our page at patreon.com/funnyandAmen. For just $2 a month, you can watch our podcast a whole week early and see exclusive stand-up comedy that can't be seen anywhere else. For only $5 a month, you'll have access to the podcasts, the stand-up, and behind-the-scenes content, exclusive first looks at new comedy projects we're working on, and bonus, we're going to send you a t-shirt. Head to patreon.com/funnyandAmen to see all we have to offer. That's patreon.com/funnyandAmen. Morgan, in preparation, was asking me, we were talking about the question, what do you think about Jesus? It's a fascinating question because people have all kinds, even Christians have all kinds of different answers to that question. So we'll get to that question, as usual, halfway through our time together. But I want to introduce Morgan to you guys. I met Morgan at a Bible study.
Yeah.
A home life group, we call them, at the City Life Church. Woo! And tell them the story from your perspective, because I tell this story a lot when I talk about you.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. So, we were at the Della Rocca's house, I believe, back when they lived in South Philly, and I think we were discussing, just like as a group. We weren't talking about prayer requests at that point.
I think we were. Yeah.
And I was like, well, you guys, I like writing. I have a couple of scripts. At that point, Kevin was like, a couple of what? You say? And so from there, I remember just kind of telling you about, what my pieces were about. And I was really kind of freaking out because I hadn't really spoken to anyone about them outside of my husband and, forcing my mom to read it time and time again.
She was your first audience?
Yeah, pretty much. So I remember, I was talking to you and, pitching to you pretty much about the script, and you were really interested. And,
I remember that moment, like, you were like, I got a prayer request over these scripts, don't know what to do with them. And I remember, like, Brad and our pastor and a bunch of people just, like, turning and, like, looking at me like, well, Kevin, what? I mean, like, and I'm like, well, maybe I don't know if I can help you, but I can sure try or read them at least,
Yeah.
And it's been great. Since then, I remember, this is full confession, I remember being like, oh no, not another Christian screenwriter, another sappy blah movie, and the first time I'm a really slow reader and I don't have a lot of time, but I got a lot of car time, so I listen to scripts. Please, you're judging me now. I know everyone, the audience is judging me because I listen to a monotone voice read me PDFs of scripts while I drive. And I was driving to like Ohio or something for some shoot. And I put it in and I just was like, paying attention in the background. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then I wasn't fully engaged. I wasn't fully engaged in the process. I didn't realize who the mind that I was dealing with.
It's okay.
This is full confession because here I am, just like a huge supporter of yours, and I remember getting on the phone and you're like totally like, what did you think? And I was like, and you were like, well, did you laugh? And I was like, there was a moment I was like, did I laugh?
Yeah.
Well, like, I mean, there were some parts that were kind of in. I'm like, wait a minute, are you telling me this is like, because my version of comedy is like totally absurd. But I think when I read your comedy scripts, they're so the comedy comes in the side and
tongue in cheek, I guess.
Yeah. And I the second time I read it, I was like, oh, I totally did you a disservice, myself a disservice by coming in assuming that you were, a writing for Hallmark, I was like, this is never going to work at Hallmark Channel. I don't know what she's thinking. And then as soon as I was like, wait, we think the same way. We love Jesus and we love to laugh.
Yeah. I remember having so many great and funny conversations, just like making this, connection and figuring out there was synergy there. Because at the time you were working on what the Halo's.
Yeah.
And so, you sent that script over to me, and it was crazy because I'm like, oh my gosh, there are like funny Christian pieces out there, and I happen to find another funny Christian writer. Like, how is that possible, like in all the world?
In the same, it's interesting, this whole process for me of focusing on comedy and focusing on trying to make feature films. Again, my career, every filmmaker wants to make feature films, but they're hard. And as a business person, I'm like, it's hard to do that and make money at it. What's interesting is that I started my journey down this road of comedy and marrying like faith and comedy, and it was like this thing where I said, hey, you know what? I actually believe in miracles again. I'm a Christian who like says he believes in. Every Christian purports to believe in resurrection, but this Christian did not believe in miracles for a long time. And now that I still see myself failing at that belief. And so when you were introduced to me as a script writer and I read the script, I did not believe that a miracle could happen, that another seriously funny, risk-taking
takes one to know one
writer could show up at a Bible study and just be like, I need help with these scripts that are like off the wall. They're so off the wall. So so we're working together on two. Well, they're your movies, but I'm just kind of helping you network them around. Tell the audience about the two films. Just pitch, if you don't mind, or pitch the two films that I love.
Sure. So the first one is now called The Quiet Ones, although it was originally called Murderers, a little more vague. And that particular script is about a girl who suspects herself of being a serial killer. So pretty much all the people that she has quietly hated. Who should I be looking at?
Yeah. You look at where I'm looking like, is the audio rolling? Is the camera rolling? Yeah, we're good. Okay. I can keep on.
So all the people that she's quietly hated, just eventually start popping up dead all around her, and she suspects that it's her that's doing it. So it's kind of funny. It's a little bit of a thriller comedy, and I know we actually got to do a photo shoot just for some concept photos, and those were just really fun to make. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, your sister playing the lead character who suspects she's a murderer.
Yeah.
Her now boyfriend as the boyfriend, as the cheating boyfriend.
I think that's actually the first time that they really like met, or no, I think they'd met once before, but they talked.
Yeah, there. Well, there was already because Christina was like interning for me or working for me at the time, and there was already a little bit of a hint there, and then he took his shirt off and.
And the rest is history.
Dave's ripped, Yeah, I would take my shirt off and women would flee. Dave's like a magnet. So. What I love about that concept for that film, The Quiet Ones, is it's based off of a teaching of Jesus.
Right.
That, if you hate someone, you've killed them in your heart. And... Were you like sitting in church and heard that and then were like, oh, that'd be a great like dark comedy?
Well, actually, not particularly. It's more so the opposite.
Okay.
Where
you were thinking about murdering someone and then
not quite. Not
quite. She didn't deny it.
I plead the fifth. No, so I had actually written that script in response to a competition, right? So the competition was for this small production company that was offering $200,000 budget to produce a feature-length film that had 4 locations, no more than 10 characters. And so that was the challenge. I had literally just started writing prior to then and had written a feature and was really proud of it, but it was garbage. And so
I'm really proud of garbage.
Yeah, I was really, really proud of it.
I'm really proud of my garbage, yeah.
But it was, it wasn't good. But it's okay, it was a start. And So when I was looking for concepts for this particular piece, thought about, at the time, there were a lot of PSAs about bullying and anti-bullying and whatnot. And I was like, well, what does it look like for an adult to be in a situation where she feels as though she's bullied? And can we create an anti-hero out of this alleged victim, you know? To sort of show more of a broad perspective of what bullying looks like and how bullies can, or people who are bullied can in themselves become bullies and whatnot. And so in kind of thinking through this and jotting down notes about it, that's where the scripture came out. Where
that's cool.
I saw God in that moment and was like,
yeah,
because that is one thing that I really want to do in every work that I do. I don't want to write as though God doesn't exist. I don't live like God doesn't exist, but oftentimes in film, it's almost like we have to create a reality where there is no God and where stuff just happens and there's no consequence and there's no, hope and there's no grace and there's no nothing. It's just stuff that happens. And so if I wanted, in my mind, I kind of made this resolution a long time ago that if I want to create worlds, I want to create worlds that show God in a true light. Not just in a squeaky clean, everything makes sense and everything's perfect type of world that we sometimes see in Christian film, but actually show off who I know God to be. And even if that isn't fully understood at all times, show off the understanding sometimes too, because people need to know that, God is, but we're not always going to understand every aspect or element of him. So yeah, that's where that came in. Like, not just creating a character in her world or a situation, but also infusing into that the reality, the postulate, I guess is what we would call it in math, that God is. So.
Postulate. I did not expect postulate to be one of the vocabulary words for this podcast. It must be because we're not drinking whiskey. The postulate was allowed to come out. Here, the postulate.
It's a postulate.
All right, so give us a little, if you don't mind, give us a little bit about the Save It.
Okay.
Which I think is amazing.
So Save It is a pure comedy. It's a buddy flick about 4 girls who enter into a virginity tontine. So essentially what happens...
Tontine, another big word for the day.
Tontine. So essentially a pot, So the girls, they meet in middle school, become friends through... interesting circumstances. Let's just call it an act of fate. And...
I know what it is. It's awesome.
And in this moment, they decide that they are not going to have sex until they go to college. They want to stay virgins throughout high school and stay focused on school or whatever their goals or ambitions are at the time. So throughout high school, they all hold to what their definition of virginity is. But they at one point realize in their senior year that they're... I forgot to mention. Right. So when they make this promise, they all bet money, put it into the tontine. They all bet money that they'll be able to maintain their virginity. And they put this money into the stock market and forget about it. Their senior year comes about. They've all held to their promise as much as we know. But that money has ballooned to a huge amount that none of them had ever expected. And so at this point, with, college tuition and student loans looming in the not so distant future, each of the girls essentially tries to get her friend laid or kicked out of the tontine. So
yeah, that's, yeah. I mean, I just like, that's the one. I don't remember if you pitched that one to me the first night at the. I don't think so. If you had pitched that to me before I'd read The Quiet Ones, I would have known the mind that I was dealing with. I'd be like, wait, the what? wait, I met you at a Bible study, and you got this comedy movie about friends trying to get each other laid, for money, so they win. To me, that's just like great. It's just so great. We had a fairly famous Hollywood executive's right-hand man reading it and loving it, and then the Me Too happened, and that guy's name is Harvey, and you can know the rest. Sorry, Harvey, you missed out on that one. Could have learned a valuable lesson there, maybe. hang out with some Christians.
All things considered, I think it worked out as it should have.
Yeah, we'll see. You never know who you're going to deal with. Humans, man, we're all messed up in ways.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much as Harvey. Maybe we are. I don't know. That's more spiritual discussion. So, what do you have any talk about writing in general? Because when I first met you, you and your husband was in the NFL. I heard science and stuff like that. Like, tell us about your trajectory. Because you've been on this, like, every time I hang out with you, there's more script ideas coming, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. We're reconnecting, but there's also these different. There's the pro X marketing, and so what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, right? So when it comes to writing and the sciences, they've been pretty much two parallel trajectories in my life. Mm-hmm. I've always loved writing, and I've always loved I won't say always, but I've grew to love science more so in like elementary, middle school. And so when it came to the writing, I first started off just like writing stories. I loved writing fiction stories like little kids do. But my mom, being so awesome, was like, no, if you're going to do this, do it. Like, focus, take time, and do it. Don't just, I'm going to write a little bit today and then forget about it. Think through what's happening next with your stories. And so I would oftentimes write her installments of different just ideas. So I'd come up with 5 pages worth of a story and then give it to her and then be like, okay, happy, for like a birthday present or something. And the next thing she'd say is, great, so what happened next? And it's like, okay. So I'm writing and sending it to her, and she would, I used to hate it. She would send it back with all these revisions and notes. And I'm 8 and she's sitting there with her red pen, you spelled that wrong. I think you can expound upon this a little bit more. But all in all, good idea. And at first I was kind of Mom, this is fun. But then I realized that she was really trying to help me to express myself clearly. I'm thinking probably now that I'm a mom, in her mind, she's like, great, you like writing, enjoy that, but also the skills that you're obtaining here you can use elsewhere, so let's take it seriously. So she really was one of the biggest motivators that didn't just loved everything I did like a lot of millennials say, my mom and dad, they gave me participation trophies. She was not that person. But because she really pushed me but with encouragement and love, never just you gotta
sell these scripts to make money.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
The family. No.
But with encouragement and love, I think it really helped me to develop. So when I was 15, I started writing a piece that will remain nameless, and I actually published it as a novel when I was 18. Oh, wow. So that was a really cool experience as well. She helped me along with that process and working with the publisher and all that. And it was weird because, I'm applying for colleges, but then also doing book signings, and I discovered I hate book signings. They're so boring.
Yeah.
And so, at that point, once I discovered that I hated book signings, I was like, well, maybe this writing thing isn't for me, because, I hate book signings. And
what did you hate about book signings?
Well, sales is not something that comes naturally to me. Some people really just, can sell water to a fish. Not that person.
Yeah.
And also I hated that they were boring. And I had to actively talk to strangers, which is something that also isn't really fun to me.
Yeah.
One-on-one conversations are great, but I'm more of the introverted type. So it really was, I'm glad I did it. It pushed me out of my comfort zone, but at the same time I realized if this has to be my livelihood, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
This is not, so, which is why we work really well together too.
Because I like talking to strangers.
Yeah, he likes talking to
strangers. Hi guys, welcome to the podcast.
And so, yeah, at that point, I kind of, like, didn't really let go of writing. I still wrote personally, but wasn't really thinking about it professionally. At the same time, I did a lot of internships. I was planning on going to medical school when I was a kid, like middle school. That was my goal, to be a doctor. So did a lot of internships.
Paging Dr. Hepburn. Paging Dr. Hepburn.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the goal. Yeah.
Cool.
So at Johns Hopkins, I worked there for a couple of years doing research in their, like, I was interested in the brain sciences. So I did research in, what is it called? Language and cognition, working with kids that had issues, developmental challenges. Then decided that I wasn't really a fan of that. And so transitioned into just more so doing rotations. Like, I actually scrubbed in for brain surgery a couple times, which I told you about. Discovered that wasn't really, so it was really a process of discovery for me, going step by step, trying out different labs, different aspects, because I knew I always loved the rigor of science. But there were, when you get down into the nitty gritty of different disciplines and fields, you kind of realize that you either have to like love it and commit to it, or don't.
Yeah.
So for me, figuring out what that field was took a while. I actually got my bachelor's degree in chemistry, went on to pursue and obtain half of a PhD in integrated biosciences.
So you have the P and
I
half
have the
the
P.
H.
P and half the H.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
And
first line.
it was while I was in this program, because it was very like wet lab. So when you think of, people in a white coat with glasses doing, stuff, pipetting stuff and shaking
pipettes
stuff,
and the flasks.
centrifuging stuff.
Love flasks.
Flasks, Bunsen burners, all
Ooh.
that. Yeah, that's not me either. So
You discovered.
I thought it was.
Halfway through the H.
I'm like, I can't, this isn't me. The one thing that I really was passionate about and really loved was the data component. Like, once we figured out the numbers, crunching those numbers, making them make sense, building a story around it, that was where the interest lied for me. So I'm like, okay, well, it's a long, windy journey to figure out that that's what I like, but okay, sure. So at the time, there weren't, I knew that this was something I was interested in, but I had a hard time really finding the specific program that would that would empower me to pursue that professionally, data analytics. And so I took a little break from school, and at that time got married and had kids, and it was in that
She's
stretch.
a mom too, all this and a mom.
It was in that stretch that we met.
Yeah.
And the film, discovering that film was an interesting avenue and opportunity for me to continue to write and be a story maker without having to do book signings.
That's cool.
So,
now we're here. Let's take a break, and we'll come back and talk more with Morgan Hepburn. Thanks. Welcome back to Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends. I'm Kevin Hackenberg. If you like what you see and you want to see it earlier and see more of it and see some of our short films, please go to patreon.com/Funny&Amen and check it out. You can see Morgan Hepburn cameoing in one of our first short comedies called Selfie Nation.
Oh, yeah.
And there won't be up there, but Morgan helped me write this reality series about cats for Liturgy a while back, and that was so much fun. And also on the podcast, Jody Lauren Miller, Jody collaborated on that, so it was a fun experience working with you guys there. So the question I ask everybody is, what do you think of Jesus?
What do I think of Jesus? Well, I think that Jesus is awesome. Let's start there. I know that for me, over the course of my life, I was raised in a Christian home. And so I always had a general idea or concept of that there was a Jesus. and that he did something for my sins. He died, and that's necessary so that I won't go to hell, and I have to believe in him. But it wasn't until, I was in high school and really going through a lot of these changes and decision-making processes, particularly like when it came to the writing and the science and what do I want to do and who am I, and figuring that out, that I really came to see and know Jesus as a life, I won't even say like a friend, a life companion, because it's like he has just given me, he's led me places that I haven't wanted to go personally, a lot of times. And having grown up the way that I grew up, I was always, obedience was always something that was instilled in us to, you obey God. No matter what, you obey God. So that wasn't really the issue. But it was like obeying while loving was the hard part for me. Because it's like, if you really love me, if you really know me, why are you requiring me to go down this path? Why are you requiring me to respond in this way? Why are you requiring me to do all of this? And I think that one of the most beautiful things about my relationship with Jesus is that even in those moments, he was still present and still there. And now that I've come through some of the harder points in my life, I can see even clearer that he was present and that he was there, and that everything that was required of me within the context of who he's already called me to be and called me to do, and what he's already called me to do. And so that's why I prefer to say like companion more than friend, because friends, it's like, especially in our American culture, it's like, yeah, buddies, yeah, we do what we want, yeah, whatever.
I like Jesus on Facebook, he likes me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we can be as close as we want to be, we can be as far apart as we want to be, but when it comes to Jesus, I feel that it's so much more than that, because there's a certain level of reverence and respect that has to come into the relationship too, but also vulnerability and openness and patience and so much more. So I'm 100% dependent on him and on just the power of the Holy Spirit really working in my life, just for simple and basic every day. Just today, I'm like, all right, God, so what am I wearing? It's just like, yeah, okay,
It's simple. Sometimes it's simple things. That's of course. I don't want to say it's a simple thing. It's a big thing sometimes. What are you wearing can be a big
sure.
life-changing decision. With the wrong thing or nothing at all.
Yeah.
But what are some of the other, like, you got so many roles: mom, wife, writer, data analytic person. Like, what are some of the other moments do you feel like you reach out and rely on that relationship?
So one of the roles that, it's funny, my husband and I do a lot of mentorship at the church, particularly for teenagers. And I remember one of the young ladies, we were all in a prayer circle, and we were trying to coach the kids up on like how to pray for themselves, but also how to pray for other people. So one of the young ladies prayed, and God, thank you for Morgan, who's everybody's mom, even though no one asks her to be. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. But in that, I know she didn't mean anything, malicious by it. Yeah. It was more funny than anything else. But is
she? Are you encouraging her to write you journals and you're redlining them and stuff like that, like your mom?
No, not all that. Although I did help her with her college entrance exam.
There you go.
So, or not exam, but essay.
Yeah.
But I really do value and respect the role that God has given me in the lives of the young people that he's brought into my life. And I really rely very heavily on the Spirit of God to be in a position to not just love them and, encourage them, but also really help to give wisdom in the hard decisions that they might have to make.
Yeah.
You know, and knowing when to speak and when to shut up, when to let them figure things out on their own, and when to intervene. You know, I really take all of that very seriously, and so that's a role that I value, and that I'm grateful that God even, you know, trusts me to be able to do.
That's cool.
And so, yeah.
When you're saying like knowing when to speak or shut up, I was like, is she talking about us as adults with interacting with youth, or them? You know?
Us as adults interacting with the youth. You know, 'cause
yeah.
sometimes, you know, you hear like a kid telling you their issues, and the first thing you want to do is just say, okay, so what you need to do is this, and this, and don't do that, and do this, and don't do that, and do that. But at the same time, respecting the fact that God's given them a brain and a heart, and He wants to lead them and guide them into truth. You know, if they become dependent on me or you to be their guiding light in every situation, they will never learn and grow. So my job and my goal is not to necessarily coach them up on life things in itself, but rather to teach them how to seek wisdom from God, accept wisdom from God, obey that wisdom when it comes. That's really, I feel like if I can instill that in the people that God has entrusted me to help mentor, then I've really done my job. Because, you know, I can teach you all day, like, yeah, do this, do that. But, you know, when my advice fails, then what?
I can tell you all day. Yeah. It's very interesting. I was thinking about all those things that we were learning in high school, in middle school, all that stuff, and we got a lot of experience now, but we're still learning.
Yeah.
If our hearts and minds are in the right place, we need to think of ourselves like that, where the whole opportunities are in front of us, and we can make those decisions. We can just because we're have had time to make decisions. Our trajectory for our life is just as it was at the end of high school. Mm-hmm. It's just as it was, and so we can make the same kind of dumb mistakes. Right. Hopefully, we have the wisdom not to, but we can also like step out and take risks too, like that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's the morning, and we got to do some stuff today. I got to go tell people about your scripts, and you got to go run many other worlds that you're involved in. So
yeah, I've got class actually coming up.
She's got class. I have no class.
Yeah.
This is Funny&Amen. Thank you for watching. Christians who drink whiskey and their minded friends, and tell your friends.